Hey guys, this is James from the jspot. We're here at Toyota Cyprus in Nicosia today, checking out this gorgeous car. Just so we can get the elephant out of the room, first off and straight away, because this is the thing that blew the most minds as soon as this car dropped. The collaboration. This is the part we're going to talk about to start this bit off with, and this is the part that I want to get out of the way. The collaboration that happened with this car. This car still fundamentally drives and looks like a Toyota from so many little details that we'll get into, but the main thing that I want to get across to our viewers is that without collaborations in the world that we live in today, as far as automotive is concerned, cars like this just wouldn't happen. And for petrol heads such as ourselves, we don't really want to live in a world where cars like this can't happen. Because cars like this are what get our blood pumping, they're what give us goals, they're what give us something to look forward to at the weekend when we're going to pull it out of the garage, or on a daily basis, they just get the blood flowing when you want to drive them whenever and wherever you can. There are so many companies that collaborate together in today's world to bring us so many different cars. The only difference is that we usually don't notice or we don't care because they're cars that we drive on a daily basis and we just use them to get from point A to B. That one right there being a good example. The problem when there's collaborations with cars like this is nostalgia and the fact that everybody became so attached to what the Mk5 Supra was that they were so busy, laser focused on what it was and what it became and the cult following after that, that the expectations for this car were so through the roof that even when the car got here, people were too busy talking about what they thought it should be than actually giving it a shot and giving it a try. One thing that some people have brought up is the price and how it costs significantly more than the Mk4 when it launched. I'll tell you something though, if you check the numbers of the Mk4 against inflation to today's rates, this car is exactly where it needs to be, and this car, which is the car that you'll see the onboard of, specifically is on the road in Cyprus at 68,000 euros, which is right about exactly how much the Mk4 Turbo launched at, and that was over 25 years ago. In today's market, this is the right car at the right price for the European market and many other markets. Anybody that knows their classic Toyotas knows that this car has some very strong design cues from one of the most legendary Toyotas of all time, the 2000 GT. One of those being the double bubble roof, and another really strong one along the side shot of this car from the A pillar to the B pillar with the passenger. This section right here. Toyota also worked extremely hard to make sure that this car has perfect 50-50 balance, has a very, very sporty wheelbase to it, almost the perfect wheelbase for a sports car. And something that a lot of people don't know is that this car actually has a lower center of gravity than the GT86, and the GT86 has a boxer engine which is renowned for being able to be placed low in a chassis just so you can get a low center of gravity. Considering that this is a big straight six with a turbo on it and it's sitting up like that, that is a big achievement from Toyota. So we all know very well that when the Ep.1 concept of this car came out, we all absolutely fell in love with it. Just the same way that when the concept for the GT86 came out, we all fell in love with it. And then when the actual car came along, everybody's like, wow, but it's not the same, it's not the same. If you're still at the point where you're thinking that you're seeing a concept car and you're thinking by the time it actually gets to the showroom or the road, it's gonna look exactly the same, you're delusional and you need your head checked. That's just straight up truth right there. We're all adults, and car guys sometimes need to really get it together when it comes to that stuff. This car is another example of that, because the Ep.1 concept came out, and then when they revealed this car a couple of months ago, and there were some details that were different, everybody was up in arms about it. But there's plenty of reason why some of the details were different, and there was good reason for that. This car is fundamentally Toyota through and through, from the styling to the handling to so many different things. And just like the GT86 cousin, this car was built by Toyota, and they definitely had the car community in mind. And I'm going to take you through a couple of the things as to why. This tiny bit of plastic right here that's on the grate is there to block off extra air, because Toyota realized during development that this car was getting too much cooling. But there's other vents that are removable. This vent right here, removable. This vent right here, removable. This vent right here on the door, also removable. This vent right here at the back, also removable. Plenty of things on this car are right there, because this, along with the GT86, which everybody lost their minds about when it came out, that it wasn't what they wanted, is destined for the performance aftermarket. And if it's not destined for the performance aftermarket and you just want to leave it bone stock, it's just that damn good the way it is. Another thing that Toyota has for this car are special Pilot Super Sport tires that are specifically re-engineered for this car. And how you can tell them apart? These ones for the Supra have this star right here after the Pilot Super Sport on the sidewall. Okay, so even though we weren't so kind about the rear end of this car in our driving video, it's one of those things that when you see it in reality, it grows on you more and more and more over time. Even though it is skinnier than what we're used to on a Supra, you got to remember that this car is a smaller car overall than the Mark IV. And even though it's skinnier, the lines on the rear end of this car are absolutely stunning. The one that comes over the rear arches, this ducktail spoiler right here is pure perfection. And interesting side note there is the fact that Toyota reinforced the boot lid in these two places at the end of the ducktail spoiler, just because they knew that the performance aftermarket would probably come along and put a big GT wing on this thing. But I'm telling you, from the side or from the rear view, this car needs nothing on the boot lid. This ducktail is perfect. Also, there's just so many lines to take in, and they're so stereotypically, quintessentially Toyota and Japanese through and through. A little bit of heritage mixed with a little bit of modern, and one of my personally favorite things about the back of this car, however strange it may sound, is this fog and reverse light right here. Formula One inspired, and it just looks so cool. We are driving the 2019 Toyota Supra.
Oh yeah!
We're very grateful to Toyota Cyprus for the chance to drive this car before anybody else is driving it. And this is only the second car to come to Cyprus. Front end of this car is very sexy. I have to say, a few people have said that you don't understand how nice this car is until you see it in person, and you really don't.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
And because we're car guys, we'd be remiss if we didn't say it, but this car on a fat set of aftermarket rims will look disgustingly good. But I genuinely have nothing but the best to say about this car. It is absolutely beautiful. The drive is so precise. The big Brembos, the sticky tires, the sticky Michelins, it's just a phenomenal car. That torquey 3-litre engine and the turbos, it's just, they're so smooth. One thing that I love about this car, and the other one that we won't mention that it shares the engine with, is the fact that they're straight sixes. Owning a GTR, one of the legacy GTRs, that straight six through some nice exhaust, so smooth, so buttery, that note, that high-pitched exhaust note as it flies past, that we all love on the 2JZs, people will come to love it on this car as well, because it's just, you can't beat a straight six. We're on the A90 straight, James.
I wouldn't do it if I was you.
I'm going to drop down a gear, I'm going to give it a little bit, but whoa! Whoa, that was hardly anything, and it just picks up. So guys, I think there's only one way that we can cap off this week's episode, and might create a bit of a stir while we do it. The Mark V Supra, does it live up to its namesake? I'd say at this point in time, it definitely does. because when the Mark IV dropped, it exceeded everyone's expectations, and right now the Mark V is exceeding everybody's expectations that is actually getting up close and personal with it, and the lucky few that have driven them. This car would be phenomenal on a daily basis, as a weekend driver, if you want to buy it to modify it. And yes, the performance aftermarket is well and truly on the way already as far as this car is concerned. Tuners in Japan are already starting to put out parts for this car. The tuners in the US are starting to get their hands on these cars and start developing parts for them. So that is well and truly on the way. And I'll tell you something, if this engine didn't pass Toyota's approval and Toyota's quality standards, which I assure you it passed Toyota's quality standards to make it into one of their cars with a badge on it, this engine would not be in here. So when this car got released a couple of months ago and all the pictures started popping up online and everybody was like, oh, it's this, it's that, it's not this, it's not that, oh, I'm not gonna buy it, and at that price point, at this price point. At this point in time, I've been thinking about it since we drove the car. I can't think of a car at a better price point. The only market at this point in time that gets close is the US market when the C8 Corvette comes along, and that's an entirely different kind of car. My personal opinion, 99% of the people that are giving this car hate are not people that would be buying this car. They're not people that have even owned the Mark IV Supra, and they definitely haven't probably ever even sat in a Mark IV Supra, because the internet loves to have its opinion on everything. The reality of it though, outside of the internet, is that the reality is far greater than the expectation. Guys, this is James from the J-Spot. If you like this, hit the like. If you dislike this, if you don't agree with what I just said about this Supra, hit the dislike. I don't care. I drove this car. I know just how good it is.